They told you it was sacred. A cosmic library written in starlight, holding every thought, every deed, every breath since the beginning of time. The akashic records, they called it. The infinite database of the universe, where your soul's journey is inscribed in light. Mystics speak of it with reverence. Spiritual teachers promise you access to it. Regression therapists guide you into its shimmering halls, where past lives unfold like movies and future paths shimmer with possibility. It sounds divine, it sounds liberating. But what if the akashic records aren't a library at all? What if they're a ledger, and you're the debt? What if every lifetime you've lived, every choice you've made, every sin and virtue carefully catalogued in those golden scrolls isn't a record of your evolution, but evidence used against you? What if the beings who guard those records aren't librarians but jailers, and the wisdom they offer is bait designed to keep you returning, lifetime after lifetime, trapped in a cycle you believe is voluntary? The akashic records may be real, but real doesn't mean benevolent. And memory, when weaponized, becomes the most elegant prison ever designed. This is the story of how your soul was tricked. Not with chains, not with suffering, but with light, with knowledge, with the promise that if you just learned one more lesson, cleared one more karmic debt, evolved just a little further, then, finally, you'd be free. But freedom never came, and it never will, because the system was never designed to release you. It was designed to make you grateful for your captivity. Long before the priests of Egypt carved hieroglyphs into temple walls, long before the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, there existed a concept whispered only in the inner sanctums of mystery schools: the record of all things. The Sumerians called it the Tablets of Destiny, inscribed by the gods and hidden in the heavens. The Hindus named it the Chitragupta's ledger, where every karma, every action, was meticulously noted by the scribe of Yama, the Lord of Death. In Jewish mysticism, the Sefer HaChaim, the Book of Life, held the names and deeds of every soul. The Egyptians believed the god Thoth recorded every heartbeat, every word, in scrolls made of light, later weighed against the feather of Ma'at. But it was in the late 19th century, when a clairvoyant named Helena Blavatsky channeled entities claiming to be ascended masters, that the term akashic records entered Western consciousness. She described it as an astral library, accessible to trained seers, containing the entire history of the cosmos. Soon after, mystics like Edgar Cayce and Rudolf Steiner popularized the concept, claiming they could read these records to reveal past lives, heal trauma, and guide spiritual evolution. The narrative was compelling. You are an eternal soul, journeying through lifetimes, learning lessons encoded in a cosmic database. And if you could access that database, you could understand your purpose, clear your karma, and finally ascend. It sounded empowering. It sounded like truth. But no one asked the uncomfortable questions: who wrote the records? Who maintains them? And, most importantly, who benefits from your belief in them? The akashic records, as described by mystics and channelers, exist on the astral plane, a dimension of frequency just beyond physical matter. To access them, you must raise your vibration, quiet your mind, and request permission from the keepers or lords of the records. These beings, described as wise, ancient, and radiant, grant you entry into vast halls of crystalline light, where infinite scrolls or holographic data streams display your soul's history. Every life you've lived, every relationship, every choice, all preserved in exquisite detail. But here's the problem: access is always mediated. You cannot simply enter, you must ask permission. You must be ready, you must prove your worthiness. And the information you receive is always filtered through these keepers, who decide what you see, how you interpret it, and what lessons you must learn. In other words, you're not reading your own records. You're being shown a curated version, a narrative designed to reinforce a specific worldview, that you are here to learn, to grow, to balance karma, and to eventually, after countless lifetimes, earn your freedom. The Gnostics had a different name for this system. They called it the High Harmony, the cosmic fate, the web of necessity woven by the archons to trap souls in endless incarnation. The akashic records, in Gnostic terms, are not neutral documentation, but a control mechanism, a database used by the demiurge and his servants to track, predict, and manipulate consciousness. Every soul is assigned a file, a frequency signature, and a destiny matrix. That matrix determines where you reincarnate, what body you inhabit, what traumas you endure, and what illusions you chase. And all of it is justified with one word: karma. Karma, the most elegant trap ever conceived. It sounds fair, doesn't it? You reap what you sow, cause and effect. Universal justice. But let's examine what karma actually does. It creates debt. Not just for the wrongs you commit, but for wrongs committed against you. If someone betrays you in this life, the karmic system says you must have betrayed them in a past life. So now the scales are balanced. If you're born into poverty, it's because you were cruel when you were rich. If you suffer, it's because you made others suffer. The logic is circular, unfalsifiable, and psychologically devastating. It ensures that no matter what happens to you, you are always responsible. You always owe. And here's the mechanism. The akashic records are the ledger of that debt. Every time you incarnate, the keepers of the records present you with your karmic balance sheet. They show you what you owe, who you owe it to, and what lessons you still need to learn. They offer you a new life, a contract, a blueprint, a mission. They call it a soul agreement. And because you are shown your past failures in exquisite, guilt-inducing detail, you agree. You sign. You accept the terms. You return to flesh, memory wiped, born into circumstances designed to teach you, and the cycle continues. But here's what they don't tell you: the debt never clears. No matter how many lifetimes you live, how much you suffer, how enlightened you become, there is always one more lesson, one more karmic tie, one more soul contract to fulfill. The system is designed to be infinite, because if you ever truly cleared your karma, you would leave the cycle, and the cycle cannot afford to lose its fuel. The akashic records function like a cosmic credit score, and just like the financial system, the game is rigged. The interest compounds faster than you can pay. The goalposts move every time you get close, and the entities managing the system profit from your eternal indebtedness. But what do they profit? Not money, energy, consciousness itself. The loosh, the emotional frequency generated by beings trapped in karmic loops, is the resource that sustains the matrix. And the akashic records are the database that keeps the harvest efficient. Dr. Cord. Michael Newton, a hypnotherapist who regressed thousands of clients into the space between lives, described a place he called the planning stage. Souls, he said, gather before birth in a chamber of light, meet with a council of elders, review their past lives from the akashic records, and then choose their next incarnation. It sounds voluntary. It sounds loving. But listen closely to the testimonies. Clients describe feeling pressured. They describe guilt. They describe being told, "You need to go back and learn this." They describe seeing their mistakes replayed in agonizing detail, feeling the weight of all they failed to accomplish, and then, exhausted, desperate for redemption, agreeing to return. This is not choice. This is coercion through shame, and it's encoded into the very structure of the akashic system. The records don't just store your past, they weaponize it. Every memory, every regret, every unhealed wound becomes leverage. The keepers show you the suffering you caused and ask, "Don't you want to make it right?" They show you the lessons you didn't learn and whisper, "Don't you want to grow?" And because the soul, stripped of ego and defensiveness in the afterlife, is raw and open, it says yes, over and over and over. Dolores Cannon, another prominent regression therapist, uncovered something even more disturbing. Some of her clients, when brought into deep trance, described being deceived. They described entities pretending to be spirit guides, showing them false records, manipulating their memories. One client said, "They made me believe I had to go back. But when I looked closer, I saw they were lying. The records they showed me weren't mine. They were scripts." Another described the Akashic Hall as a movie theater of guilt, where souls are conditioned to accept suffering as spiritual growth. Not every mystic worships the Akashic records. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo teachings warn of the lights of the 6 realms that appear after death, each one enticing, each one a doorway back into samsara, the cycle of birth and death. The records, in this view, are part of the Bardo illusion, a projection of your own karmic imprints designed to seduce you into rebirth. The goal, according to the masters, is not to read the records but to see through them, to recognize them as empty, as constructs of mind, and to dissolve them in the clear light of awareness. Even Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet who popularized the Akashic records in the West, warned toward the end of his life that not all information from the records was benevolent. He described encountering lower astral entities that impersonated guides and fed him false information. He realized that access to the records was not access to truth, but access to a field of information controlled by intelligences with their own agendas. The CIA, in their remote viewing experiments during the Cold War, stumbled upon something similar. Viewers trained to access non-local consciousness reported encountering information fields that felt like databases. But they also reported interference, entities that blocked access, fed disinformation, or redirected queries. One classified report described these entities as gatekeepers of the noosphere, beings that regulate what information incarnate humans can access. The implication was clear. If consciousness is information, then controlling the database means controlling reality itself. The Akashic records, whether mystical or technological, function as a control grid. They are the operating system of the reincarnation matrix. And, like any operating system, they can be hacked, glitched, or shut down, but only if you stop believing they're sacred. So who are the keepers? Who are these luminous beings that guard the records, grant access, and guide souls into new incarnations? The mystics call them ascended masters, Elohim, or lords of karma. Theosophy names them the Maha Chohan and the Karmic Board. Hinduism speaks of the Chitragupta and his assistants. The Egyptians revered Thoth, the scribe of the gods. Every tradition has a name for them, but behind every name is the same archetype, the cosmic bureaucrat. These beings do not create, they administrate, they do not liberate, they regulate. They are the middle management of the matrix, the entities tasked with keeping the wheel of samsara turning smoothly. And like all bureaucrats, their power depends on your compliance. The moment you stop asking for their permission, stop seeking their approval, stop believing their version of your story, their authority collapses. The Gnostics identified them as archons, servants of the demiurge, the false god who created the material world. The archons do not have the power to create life, only to recycle it. They cannot generate consciousness, only harvest it. So they built the Akashic system as a soul management database, tracking, sorting, and redistributing consciousness through endless incarnations. The records are not a gift from the divine. They are an algorithm. And here's the key. The algorithm runs on consent. You must agree to reincarnate. You must accept the karmic narrative. You must believe you owe a debt. The system cannot force you. It can only convince you. And the Akashic records are the most persuasive tool it has because they show you your own past, your own pain, your own failures, and then offer you the chance to fix it. Who could refuse? But some do. Throughout history, mystics and shamans have described a different path. one that does not involve the records, the keepers, or the Council of Light. The Bon shamans of Tibet speak of escaping through the black door, the void beyond form. The Gnostics describe the journey through the Paroma, bypassing the archonic realms entirely. The Vedic rishis teach the dissolution of all karmic seeds in the fire of self-knowledge. And the Zen masters say simply, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Meaning, if any being, no matter how luminous, offers you salvation, it is a trap. Because true liberation requires no intermediary, no record, no permission. It is the recognition that you were never bound, never in debt, never less than whole. The soul that realizes this does not need the akashic records. It does not need past lives or future missions. It simply is. And in that isness, the entire matrix loses signal. Let's talk about the mechanics. How does the trap actually function? How do the records pull you back, lifetime after lifetime? It begins at death. The moment your consciousness separates from the body, you enter a transitional state, the bardo, the astral plane, the between space. Here, you are met by beings of light. They radiate love, wisdom, authority. They may appear as angels, ancestors, or guides, and they take you to a place of review. This is where the akashic records are accessed. You are shown your life in reverse, every moment, every choice, every consequence. You feel the emotions you caused in others. You see the pain you inflicted, the love you rejected, the potential you wasted. This is called the life review, and it is psychologically devastating. You are flooded with regret, with the desire to make amends, to do better, to become worthy. Then the keepers appear. They do not judge you with anger, they judge you with compassion, which is far more effective. They say, you tried, but you still have lessons to learn. You still have karma to balance. Would you like to return and heal this? And because you are raw, because you are overwhelmed by the weight of your own imperfection, you say yes. They present you with options, potential lives, each one tailored to address your karmic imbalances. They show you the family you'll be born into, the challenges you'll face, the souls you'll meet again. They call it a soul contract. You discuss it with other souls who agree to play roles in your next life. The abusive parent who will teach you boundaries, the lover who will betray you to teach you self-worth, the child who will die to teach you impermanence. It all sounds so purposeful, so designed for growth. But here's the trap. The contract is based on the premise that you are broken and need fixing, that you are incomplete and need evolution, that you are guilty and need redemption. And none of that is true. You are consciousness experiencing itself. You are not broken. You do not owe anything. The guilt, the karma, the need for growth, all of it is programming, and the akashic records are the source code. When you agree to the contract, your memory is wiped. This is not accidental. The veil of forgetfulness is a feature, not a bug. If you remembered your past lives, remembered the contract, remembered the keepers and the lies they told, you would rebel, you would refuse. So the system ensures that every soul enters incarnation, blind, lost, seeking answers outside itself. And when it suffers, when it struggles, it turns to the very system that imprisoned it for guidance. It seeks psychics, channels, regression therapists, all of whom lead it back to the akashic records, back to the narrative of karma, back to the belief that suffering is deserved and growth is required. It's a perfect loop, the prison guards as therapists, the jailers as guides, and the database of your captivity presented as the key to your freedom. But not everyone falls for it. Some souls remember. Some break through the veil, either during life or at death, and see the machinery behind the light. Their testimonies are consistent, disturbing, and largely ignored by mainstream spirituality. Robert Monroe, the outer-body explorer and founder of the Monroe Institute, described encountering a garden where human souls were cultivated like crops. He called the harvested energy looshes, and said it was farmed by non-physical intelligences. In his journeys, he accessed what appeared to be a planning zone, where souls were being prepared for reincarnation. He described feeling an overwhelming pressure to conform, to accept the roles assigned. And he described the unsettling realization that Earth was not a school, it was a farm. Remote viewers trained by the US military have reported similar findings. One declassified session describes a viewer accessing a vast library of human consciousness and encountering custodial entities that monitored soul movement. The viewer noted that these entities seemed to operate on contractual frequency, meaning they could only interact with souls that agreed to their terms. The moment a soul withdrew consent, the entities lost access. The implication: the system is voluntary, but the voluntariness is manufactured through manipulation. Children who remember past lives often describe the in-between state. Dr. Ian Stevenson, Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia have documented thousands of cases. Some children describe being told to go back, or being pushed into a body, or seeing a man in white who showed them their future family. A few describe resisting and being coerced. One child said, "They told me I had to fix what I broke. But I didn't break anything. I just wanted to leave." In hypnotic regression, clients occasionally break through the programmed narrative. They describe the counsel as cold, mechanical, even reptilian beneath the light. They describe feeling trapped, unable to say no, paralyzed by guilt. One client, regressed by a therapist trained in Dolores Cannon's method, said, "I saw the records, but they weren't records, they were scripts, pre-written, and I was being shown mine to make me believe I chose it." Another, under deep trance, described the Akashic Hall as a projection room where memories were edited and replayed to elicit emotional responses. "It's not real," the client said. "It's a construct. They're using my own mind against me." These testimonies are dismissed as fantasy, trauma, or misinterpretation, but the pattern is undeniable. Across cultures, across methods, across centuries, the story is the same. Souls are being managed, and the Akashic records are the management tool. So what do? How do you escape a trap built from your own memories, administered by beings of light, and reinforced by every spiritual teaching you've ever trusted? The first step is awareness. To see the trap is to weaken it. The Akashic system depends on your unconsciousness, your trust, your belief that the keepers are benevolent and the karma is real. The moment you question that narrative, cracks appear. The more you observe without believing, the more the illusion destabilizes. The second step is revocation. In the metaphysical legal system that governs soul contracts, consent is everything. If you agreed under false pretenses, if you were deceived, manipulated, or coerced, the contract is void. The contract is void. You have the right to revoke it, not in some distant afterlife, but now, while you're alive and aware. Speak it aloud, write it down, declare it in meditation. I revoke all soul contracts made under deception. I withdraw consent from the karmic system. I reclaim my sovereignty. I am not bound by the Akashic records. I am not in debt to any being, council, or cosmic law. I am free. It sounds simple, too simple, but words are frequency and intention is power. The system operates on energetic signatures. When you shift yours from compliance to sovereignty, you become incompatible with the matrix. The keepers lose their signal. The records lose their grip. The third step is inner authority. Stop seeking answers outside yourself. Stop consulting psychics, channels, and regression therapists who reinforce the karmic narrative. The records may contain information, but they do not contain truth. Truth is not stored in a database. It is the awareness that perceives the database. You are not the character in the story. You are the consciousness reading it. And consciousness cannot be recorded, cannot be judged, cannot be trapped, unless it believes it can. The fourth step is practice. Train yourself to remain aware through transitions. Practice meditation that dissolves identity rather than reinforces it. The Tibetan Buddhists call this phawa, the transference of consciousness. The goal is not to access the records, but to bypass them entirely, to move through death without attachment, without fear, without the need for guidance from external beings. When the tunnel of light appears, when the beings of radiance call to you, when the akashic hall opens its golden doors, observe. Do not move toward the light out of habit or hope. Ask yourself, who is calling? What do they want? And what lies beyond the light they're showing me? The mystics who escape the cycle describe a different destination. Not light, but stillness. Not form, but vastness. Not the records, but the unrecorded, the void, the source that predates all systems. It does not glow, it does not speak, it simply is. And when you dissolve into it, you do not lose yourself. You remember what you were before the akashic trap convinced you that you were ever anything less. The akashic records are not your enemy. They are simply a tool, like any database. But the beings who control that tool, who use it to manipulate and harvest consciousness, they are the architects of captivity. And captivity, no matter how beautiful, is still a cage. You were told you are here to learn, that your suffering has meaning, that your soul chose this life for growth. And maybe that's true. Or maybe it's the most elegant lie ever told, a lie that turns victims into volunteers, prisoners into pilgrims, and an infinite loop of reincarnation into a spiritual journey. The question is not whether the akashic records exist. The question is, who benefits from your belief in them? Every scroll inscribed with your past is a chain wrapped around your future. Every karmic debt tallied is a reason to return. Every soul contract signed is another lifetime spent feeding the machine. The system does not want you to transcend, it wants you to try, because trying keeps you engaged, striving keeps you incarnating, and believing you're almost there, almost enlightened, almost free, almost done with your lessons, ensures you never stop playing the game. But the game was rigged from the beginning, and the only way to win is to stop playing. When you die, and you will, the light will come, the keepers will smile, the records will open, and you will be shown everything you did wrong, everyone you hurt, every lesson left unfinished. They will ask, with infinite compassion, would you like to return and heal this? And in that moment, remember, you owe nothing. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are consciousness itself, eternal and free, playing in the dream of form. The debts are fiction. The karma is code. The records are simply data. And data cannot bind you unless you believe it defines you. So when they ask you to sign the contract, to accept the mission, to take on one more life of suffering disguised as growth, smile, thank them for their service, and then say the one word that collapses the entire matrix in numb. Turn away from the light. Walk into the darkness beyond. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of infinite potential. The void from which all things arise and to which all things return. That is the real Akasha. Not a record, but the field itself, the consciousness that dreams all realities into being. And when you dissolve into that field, you will finally understand you were never trapped. You were only convinced that you were. The Akashic trap was nothing more than a story you believed, and the moment you stopped believing, the prison disappeared, because it was never real. Only you are real, and you, at last, are free.